Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are doing fine. I'm also okay. Today, I want to share with you 3 reasons why I am persuaded that the Anti-Ruto Coalition is dead on arrival. Now, before you click away in protest, because maybe let's say you are part of the Anti-Ruto Coalition or you are sympathetic to them, I want to remind you that since William Ruto declared his interest of leading this country one day in early 2006, his ambition has always been opposed. Even when William Ruto sacrificed his presidential candidature for Raila Odinga in 2007 and thereafter stood by him, by 2009, there were elements in ODM whose only mission was to ensure that Ruto amounted to nothing. The aim was to scatter his ambitions of ever being president. Even when William Ruto sacrificed again and supported the ambitions of one Uhuru Kenyatta, and Uhuru Kenyatta, out of his own volition, decided to promise that when the time came, he would gladly not just endorse William Ruto, but campaign for him. What did he do? After getting his second term, Uhuru Kenyatta formed a coalition with Raila Odinga and made Ruto's life a living hell. One thing that happened is, that I wanted you to note before you clicked away, is that William Ruto still became president. Meaning that all that opposition amounted to nothing in the end. William Ruto still won. And I am persuaded that he's still going to win against the current coalition because of 3 main reasons. If you can handle ugly truth, I urge you to keep watching. And if you are watching this channel for the first time, please just take a moment, subscribe to this channel so that whenever we produce videos of this nature, you will be notified. Ladies and gentlemen, like I've told you, William Ruto is not new to controversy when it comes to politics. His beginnings, politically speaking, were very controversial because he had to defeat a KANU veteran. It was not expected, but he won nonetheless. So I'm telling you that President William Ruto all along has been a guy who comes and challenges the status quo. When he was demoted to what is currently a state department, then the ministry in charge of higher education, Ruto is the person who revived the TVETs, and 2, the man who ensured that you don't have to wait for 2 years before joining university after secondary. He is a person who goes somewhere and he has what he wants to do. And this, ladies and gentlemen, does not please certain people. You know that people always desire change, but they are opposed to how the change is going to affect them. If the change is going to happen without affecting their status quo, they are okay. But you see, that is not change. You cannot keep the status quo and at the same time have change. And Ruto is one person who comes, wherever he gets a chance, he wants to make significant changes. He did a lot as the minister in charge of agriculture, that he was rated number 1. In the Ministry of Higher Education, he made changes that have affected our lives to date. And so it is only natural that agents of status quo will not be very comfortable with William Ruto. But have they won against him? No, because majority of Kenyans, even though they are afraid of change, they are willing to sacrifice a bit for a better future. Which brings us to now. Currently, William Ruto is being accused of destroying the country. When you listen to the anti-Rutos, they will tell you that Ruto's government is the worst regime since independence. Is that supported by facts? Of course not, because under Ruto, inflation went to 2%. The last time we had such a low inflation, and inflation, by the way, is what corresponds to the cost of living. If the inflation is down, the cost of living is down. Inflation, literally, is the measure of how much your money is worth in terms of what can it buy. So if your money is worth more, then the cost of living is lower, and that is what inflation is. The last time inflation was that low was 17 years ago. 17 years ago. But somebody would want you to believe that Ruto's regime is the worst. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the first reason why I believe that the Anti-Ruto Coalition is a non-starter, that they will fail the way they failed in 2022, because they are not offering an alternative. The people criticizing William Ruto are not offering an alternative. The only thing that is uniting them is hatred for the man. I dare even say jealousy. To explain to you why the current Anti-Ruto Coalition is not an alternative, let us look at some of the individuals leading this coalition. Let's begin with the most vocal, the man who has made it his mission to insult William Ruto whenever he gets a chance, the former Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. Who is Rigathi Gachagua? He was a one-term MP who became popular by insulting Uhuru Kenyatta, but who was not the love of the Mount Kenya people. In fact, when Mount Kenya people were given a chance to nominate somebody to be Ruto's running mate, they picked Kindiki instead. This man got the least votes from the people of Mount Kenya. He was not their darling. In fact, they used to call him Aibu wa Rais when Ruto finally picked him. This one-term MP went ahead and campaigned for the same policies that Ruto is implementing today. And when they won the election in 2022, what did he do? He focused on implementing the same policies that Ruto is being accused of today. So Rigathi Gachagua cannot be an alternative. He was part and parcel of Ruto's regime, and not a silent one. He was one who would call MPs and tell them to support the finance bill. He would call MPs and urge them to support affordable housing. He was the person who chaired all the cabinet meetings that came up with SHA. This is not your ordinary deputy president. He was a deputy president with portfolio. Ruto gave him so much power that it got into his head and he started thinking that he was also a president. Rigathi Gachagua was part and parcel of every policies he is accusing Ruto of today. The only reason why Rigathi Gachagua is bitter and insulting Ruto is because he found himself in the cold. Hubris had made him believe that he was untouchable. So he did something that was not going to be forgiven. He started making it look like it was the policy of this government to only support those who voted for it. And it can't be like that, because when you do that as a policy, then why would the other people who did not vote for you pay taxes? And he doubled down. Even when he was told, don't do this, he insisted, because like I told you, Ruto had given him so much power that he believed he was a co-president. He doubled down. And so once he is now out of that bitterness, Rigathi Gachagua is recanting everything he had ever said. He was on record supporting the finance bill, even congratulating MPs for defeating Azimio. Kuwanyorosha, to quote his own words. Now he will tell you, I used to tell Ruto that finance bill was the worst one. He is on record several times explaining how affordable housing was not just about creating houses, but also creating jobs, urging MPs to facilitate and support this in every way they could. Today, he'll look at you in the eye and tell you affordable housing is the worst scam against Kenyans. This is the man who chaired every cabinet committee that came up with SHA. But he would now appear like somebody who was shocked, who didn't know anything. You would see him meeting Hemeti, laughing with him, giggling, having discussions, and posting it comfortably. But now, he would be like, that is a terrorist, an international criminal. Why would anybody make? So Rigathi is just contradicting himself because he has found himself on the opposite side. He has found himself outside the government. And so out of bitterness, he is now accusing the government of doing things that he would ordinarily support. Genuine Kenyans who look at Rigathi don't see an alternative. They see somebody who was with Ruto, who was doing everything that Ruto was doing, but is now bitter because he's outside. Let's look at Martha Karua. Is Martha Karua some fresh outsider who is coming to change this country? No. Martha Karua was part and parcel of Kibaki's government. In fact, Martha Karua was so hated because of unnecessary arrogance. She was too arrogant that she didn't care whether this country was going to burn as long as she was protecting Kibaki. The only time Martha Karua left Kibaki was when Kibaki decided to make Uhuru Kenyatta the deputy prime minister instead of her. And she walked out. As is expected, Martha Karua is persuaded that whatever she thinks is right, her position is the right position. And she feels so entitled that if you don't give her what she feels she deserves, she will walk away. So Martha Karua has been part and parcel of government before. What is her record? What are these things that you look at and you say that during Martha Karua's time in Kibaki's government, these are the things she achieved? So that you could say, this is some serious reformer. Nothing. I dare you, list them down. Nothing. Unlike Ruto, who I can say that during his time in Kibaki's government as the Minister for Agriculture, Agriculture Ministry was rated as the #1 ministry. Even though people cooked some drama, some scandal to make Ruto look bad, Agriculture was ranked #1. When William Ruto was demoted to what is currently a state department, but then a ministry, the Ministry of Higher Education, it is William Ruto who revived TVETs. And not just that. Then people had to wait for a year or two before you joined university after leaving Form 4. It is William Ruto who did away with that. So this is somebody who you could go to Kibaki's government and see what did he achieve as a minister. He made impression. Unlike Martha Karua, what would you say were Martha Karua's achievements? He was in that government. The only thing people know her for is that she was a hardliner. In fact, she was so much a hardliner in Kibaki's government that the people who liked her tribal positions used to call her the only man from Mount Kenya in Kibaki's kitchen cabinet. She was so tough. She was so such a hardliner. So Martha Karua is not somebody new. She's been in government. But then you may be arguing that, you see, let's say she's been in government, but Martha Karua is a principled human being. And that is what Kenya is lacking. No, she's not. Martha Karua went from one interview to the other explaining why she cannot work with Raila Odinga. She was explaining how they differ politically in terms of how their brand of politics. I dare you, I am challenging you, just check the videos of Martha Karua explaining why she cannot work with Raila Odinga. She was so detailed. She said on principles, there is no way her and Raila Odinga can work together. What happened when she met Uhuru? After meeting Uhuru, Martha Karua was there, not just as Raila's running mate, but moving from one place to the other, explaining why Raila is the best person she has ever met. Is that a principled person? If you are principled, then if you disagree with Raila's brand of politics, then you disagree with Raila's brand of politics. Because Raila did not change his brand of politics for Martha Karua to now embrace him. No, it is Martha who changed her principles and embraced Raila Odinga. So she's been in government. There is nothing you can attribute to her that you'd say she did this wonderful thing for the country. Number two, she is not principled. Even if we were to just say, let's go with her being principled, she is not principled. Still on Martha. Do you remember Martha doing an interview and explaining the oath of 1969, where most Kikuyus were forced to take an oath that should power leave Kikuyus, they are supposed to fight that government the way they fought the colonial government? Martha Karua did that interview, gave a very long story explaining how people were being even killed, those who refused to go for those oaths. Yet this Martha Karua, on the day that Rigathi went to visit her, the day Rigathi went to recruit her, because I told you, Aigo, she cannot go to Amunyoro. So when Rigathi went to Martha Karua said exactly the same thing that she had criticized before. She equated Ruto's government with the colonial government. She said they are supposed to fight Ruto's government the way they fought the colonial government, which is the exact thing she said was the point of the oath. That anytime somebody not from Mulima was to take over power, then they are supposed to fight that person the way they fought the colonial government. And by saying that Ruto's government was like the colonial government, she was just repeating what the oath was about. This is not a principled person, ladies and gentlemen. Unless being principled changed meaning, Martha Karua is not a principled person. Let's look at Kalonzo Musyoka. Is Kalonzo Musyoka fresh blood? Kalonzo has been in government for decades. And there is nothing tangible you would credit to Kalonzo Musyoka. You would say, you see, when Kalonzo Musyoka was in government, this is what he achieved. This is what he did. Nothing. And he has been in government longer than William Ruto. You should know that. So Kalonzo Musyoka is not offering an alternative. He's not some new blood. He's not some guy who is going to now give us a fresh way, a fresh direction. No. No. And is he principled? Of course, you know Kalonzo Musyoka would say this, and then the next day he will do the exact opposite. My favorite memory of Kalonzo Musyoka is when he said that he would be the most stupid person to support Raila for a third time, only to go for an interview to be Raila's running mate. An interview where he was not picked. What about Eugene Wamalwa? So Eugene Wamalwa was in Uhuru's government. The other day is Minister for Defense, Minister for Devolution. What did Eugene do? What do you remember him for? What is this specific thing that Eugene achieved during that time? William Ruto was actually his boss. He started opposing Ruto when he, Eugene Wamalwa, joined Uhuru Kenyatta in ensuring that Ruto does not become president. Not because they had issues on matters of principle, no. When things were working for them, Eugene Wamalwa never complained. He was serving from one ministry to the other. And as colorless as possible, because there is nothing you will remember Eugene Wamalwa for. What about Matiang'i? Let's say Matiang'i is part of this game. It is during Matiang'i's time as minister in charge of internal security that bodies were being picked in Rivayala. Forget this modern abduction where you are abducted and the next thing you are released and you have your Twitter account, you have your phone with you, you are tweeting immediately, you are released, or you have the time to go to a disco matanga and dance. I'm talking of cases where you disappear and your body, if you are lucky, is found in Rivayala. And those happened when Matiang'i was the minister in charge of internal security. He's not a fresh person. He has been in government. And what people remember him for is that during his time, people used to disappear if you opposed Uhuru Kenyatta. I could go on and count every member of the Anti-Ruto Coalition. I can tell you they do not offer an alternative. That is the number one reason why their coalition is dead on arrival. There is no one that is fresh blood that is offering an alternative. Number two is related to number one. The reason as to why they will fail is because they are doing what we call traditional opposition. Traditional opposition is where you are persuaded that people hate your opponent so much that they will vote for you. You go into election believing that people wanachukia Ruto, especially civil servants. These people really hate Ruto. He has raided their paycheck. Ruto has done this. He has interfered with this. He has interfered. So your belief is that the people hate Ruto so much that the only thing sensible they can do is to vote for you. It's called traditional opposition. You oppose someone without offering a counter proposal. You could ask these people, ladies and gentlemen, the Anti-Ruto Coalition, a simple question. Do you think Kenyans deserve a better healthcare system than what was provided for under NHIF? They will all agree, yes, we need a universal healthcare, because what we had under NHIF was not offering primary healthcare. You had to be in hospital for it to pay maybe for a bed and a few tests here and there. So what do? We need a universal healthcare. How do we fund it? They'll be quiet, because they know if they are to answer that correctly, it will put them in the same place with what William Ruto is doing. I don't like Jimmy Wanjigi as a politician because he's not sincere most of the time. However, yesterday, he asked the Anti-Ruto Coalition, which he is a member of, he asked them a question. When we tell Kenyans that we will remove the taxes, how will we pay for the debts we have, and how will we run government? He understood that most of the statements that were made there were made on the basis of populism. If they want to hear that there will be no taxes, that is what you tell them. You will not pay taxes. But you're lying to them, because when you get into government, you will have to pay your debts and you will have to run the government. And to do that, you will need taxes, and not just the common taxes. You will need more taxes. Otherwise, you will have to borrow, and borrowing will have a limit. Jimmy Wanjigi asked that question, and I think the room went quiet because it was not fitting into the plan. I told you, these people have what we call traditional opposition. You oppose for the sake of opposing, with the belief that the people you are talking to hate your opponent enough that they will vote for you even though you don't have something else to offer. These are people who I've told you have been in government before. They have not offered any solutions. There is nothing they have done to change the lives of Kenyans. But then somebody is trying to change the lives of Kenyans. They use whatever he's doing to incite the people against him. For instance, you incite those who have payslip, that you see this guy is coming and he's now making you pay this and pay this and pay this. When we take over, that will not be there. You're lying to the people. That is what Jimmy said. He told them that is a lie. You will do the same things Ruto is doing, because then how will you run the country? That is the second thing. They are practicing traditional opposition, where they believe the hatred for Ruto is enough reason to make people vote for them. It didn't work in 2022. So the first reason is they have been part of the system. There is nobody new, no new idea, no nothing. And if you check their history, they have not even delivered. There are people who have been given an opportunity, and during that time when they had the opportunity, they did nothing substantive. Number two, these people believe in traditional opposition, where you just lie to your people. You tell them, so and so is taxing you, I will not tax you. But you are not offering an alternative. Like, what will you do instead of taxing us? How will you cover for these expenses without taxing us? You don't want to do that. Your point is, you don't like how you're being taxed, I will not tax you. Good cop, bad cop. Where you come, you're like, Ruto is doing this, I will not do that. What will you do instead? So they don't have an alternative. In my opinion, the third reason why this thing is dead on arrival is the fact that the entire campaign is motivated by bitterness instead of an agenda. I've always said that bitterness should not be a motivation. Because when you are bitter, you can never be rational. The people who are currently opposing William Ruto have one thing in common. They are bitter with Ruto, starting with Rigathi Gachagua. These are people who had been in power, and they are feeling that the reason as to why they are not in power is because of William Ruto. William Ruto has brought other people in power instead of them. Thanks to William Ruto, they are not enjoying the resources of the state that they used to enjoy before. And so they are moved with bitterness. And like I said, with bitterness, you can never be rational. So you will act without being careful. You will always act carelessly. Let me explain. When you give Rigathi a chance to talk, he can talk for 2 hours. What will he say in that 2 hours? Will he say, this is what we are going to do for Kenyans, as opposed to what Ruto is doing? No. He will tell you how Ruto is a very bad person, how Ruto is wicked, how Ruto is what. All he'll do is to slander Ruto. Give Kalonzo a chance. He will take another 30 minutes to slander Ruto. Give Jimmy Wanjigi a chance. The rest will be maligning Ruto. For them, painting Ruto dark is the goal, not the agenda, not telling people a counter agenda. Has this happened before? Yes. In days leading to 2022 election, Azimio campaign was about how bad Ruto is. That is why Ruto would say, hawa watu hawana agenda. Their agenda is William Ruto. They didn't tell Kenyans that they are the reason why Kenyans were suffering. Instead, they told them that there is a very bad person you should not elect. They didn't tell Kenyans that we know you have challenges. This is what we intend to do to improve life. No, they focused mainly on telling Kenyans how bad Ruto is and why they should not elect him. That is what the current Anti-Ruto Coalition is doing. They are not telling Kenyans that we've been part of the problem. We are not saying we are clean. But in our opinion, when it comes to taxes, instead of doing A, we are proposing this. No. They are telling them that Ruto is a very bad person. That all you need to do is to hate Ruto enough that if it is Ruto and a dog, you would vote for that dog. If it is it's Ruto and a tree, you would rather cast your vote for the tree. That is what they are saying. They believe that that will convince enough multitude to get Ruto out and them in. That failed in 2002, and it will fail in 2027. In fact, that is not just something that failed in Kenya. It also failed in the United States, and it has failed in Germany. It always fails when you focus so much on bitterness against your opponent. You market the opponent, because the only thing that will destroy your opponent is when you have counter ideas. The Democrats in the US focused on how uncouth Trump was, how unpresidential he was, how a bad human being he was, that they didn't tell the Americans what they would do to change their lives. On the other hand, Trump said, when I get in, this and this and this is what I'm going to do. So then they focused on making Trump look so bad as an individual, believing that it will make people hate Trump, that even if they were given mediocre agenda, they would rather go with the mediocre agenda as opposed to having Trump in the White House. Did it work? It didn't. Both the popular vote, the Senate, the House, the Electoral College, they confirmed that Trump was a better option. As bad as Trump is, compared to their agenda, compared to what they used to enjoy under the Democrats, these people decided to vote for Trump. And it is the same thing that happened in 2022 in Kenya. Uhuru and Raila focused on telling people how bad Ruto was. Yet Uhuru was the president in a regime where people could not afford unga. So instead of telling people what they were going to do to make life bearable, they focused on making them see how Ruto is bad. What happened in the end? Because Ruto was telling them, when I get into office, I will do this to lower this. I will do this to do this. That is what they voted for. Even now, Ruto is saying, you may have issues with the policies, but these policies are for the good. And I'm doing them to make it this and this. And as you can see, when I introduced fertilizer, you complained. But now you are not worried about the price of unga. You can see that when I introduced tax on fuel, you complained. But today, fuel is cheaper without subsidy than it would be under Uhuru if subsidies were not there. Our currency has stabilized against the dollar without us having to manipulate it by paying. So Ruto is saying, I have what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do. It may be painful now, it may disrupt you now, it may interfere with the status quo now, but given time, it will make Kenya better. Compare that with somebody who is spending from morning to evening telling you how bad Ruto is. Someone who is moved by bitterness. The only goal is to tell you, hate Ruto, hate Ruto. You ask them, what will you do better than him? No, just hate him. And Ruto who is saying, I know what I want to do. I know what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing this and this and this. You may not like it now, but it has these benefits. Can we sacrifice now and then enjoy later? The Anti-Ruto Coalition, in my opinion, is dead on arrival because of those three reasons. Anyway, let me know. What do you think? Do you think this Anti-Ruto Coalition can win elections come 2027? Let me hear your views in the comment section. And if you found value, please like the video and share it. Otherwise, let us meet in the next video.